After the success of the 2018 game Marvel's Spider-Man, it seemed like a sequel from Insomniac Games was inevitable, but perhaps not for one we were expecting, or maybe it's not exactly called a sequel. Brian Horton, one of the directors of Marvel's Spider-Man, stated that Miles Morales, first introduced as Spider-Man in 2011 through the separate Ultimate Marvel comics, was a loved character with his own exaggerated swagger that should actually be in the same universe as Peter Parker's Spider-Man for a change. In the preceding 2018 game, Miles was bitten by a spider also and was trained by Peter Parker, mostly off-screen. The 2020 game's Spider-Man Miles Morales is generally considered a standalone expansion, akin to Uncharted 4's own Uncharted The Lost Legacy. It is also smaller in size and scope, plus it plays very similarly to before. Let's look at what can be loosely described as an origin story for Miles Morales as he, and of course you the player, take on the role of Spider-Man. Taking place after the events of Marvel Spider-Man 2018 and its DLC, the narrative is mostly similar to before with some big differences. Miles Morales has had some good training from Peter Parker and can very much pull off the superhuman Spider-Man abilities, but his family moved from Brooklyn to Harlem and doubts about dealing with the responsibilities and legacy of Spider-Man make for some potentially difficult times. Especially as Peter Parker going overseas with Mary Jane leaves Miles as the only Spider-Man of the city for a few weeks. He even has to adapt to using his own bioelectrical abilities, or Venom. No, not that Venom. After stopping the familiar Rhino at first, he gradually gets caught up in a battle between Roxxon Corporation and a mysterious army known as the Underground, a war that could get all of Harlem caught in a crossfire, especially those really close to him. This is a Spider-Man story through and through, with Rhino being not the only returning villain. Plus, you can just replace Oscorp with the Roxxon Corporation and it's deja vu to a degree. Easily one of the best parts of the story is the emotion behind it. Not to say that Marvel Spider-Man 2018 lacked this, far from it. But Miles sharing moments with his family, his best friends, those he saves as Spider-Man and so on, feels more nuanced, relatable, interesting, fresh, and just well developed. You do start to feel for these characters and understand their motivations and backstory. The story, while simple and a little predictable, can be a little convoluted at times, but it is a comic book style battle against the bad guys that has to be experienced, especially if you're into the franchise. The pacing of it is mostly better than last time, though that may have to do with the fact that the game is shorter. Going off track here. The presentation is very similar to last time, least of all the remaster, though the fact that this was a launch title for the PlayStation 5, before eventually getting released for the PlayStation 4 or PC, has to be considered. First of all, it is once again a cinematic presentation, focusing on realism, with the skin of characters being amazing on screen, not to mention the hair that, according to Brian Horton, is spline-based hair that moves far more naturally. The lighting is great and the ray tracing works. There are some nice little details, such as the animations of Miles losing balance while sometimes doing Spider-Man stuff. This doesn't affect gameplay at all, just shows that Miles is learning how to be Spider-Man. He looks similar to the preceding PS4 game, but considering how good that generally looked, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Then again, the developers tried to take advantage of a PS5 for the 3D audio and even instantaneous loading times, an aspect of a preceding game's remaster I forgot to mention. Speaking of the audio, all the voice/motion capture cast are generally great again, and John Paesano returns to do the music. It is an orchestral score again, but mixed with hip-hop music, which is fitting for Miles in the neighborhood of Harlem. There are even notable songs, such as Art Blakey's Moaning.
Dad's favorite album. He put this on every Sunday while he made coffee.
The gameplay of traversal and combat from the previous game is very much intact, which is great for those who have played the previous game. Though if this happens to be your first modern Spider-Man game, you're in for a treat. It is still exhilarating learning to web swing and web zip automatically and at the right times so that there aren't that many problems moving around the city. It does feel slightly tighter than in the previous game. It's hard to describe, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, occasionally the game can glitch a little or it can be hard to get Spider-Man to stop. The combat is mostly unchanged as well, where basic attacks, web shooting, gadgets, jumping around the environment and so on can be utilized to make for some of the highest combo counts ever. Don't forget to use Spider Sense to dodge attacks though. One of the most noticeable changes to combat, however, is the aforementioned Venom. These attacks are something Peter Parker himself cannot help feeling a little jealous of, but don't think this makes combat significantly easier. Some enemies and bosses can only be incapacitated with venom, so successful attacks and dodges to build your venom are crucial, especially considering you can use your venom meter to regain your health. Think of this as a replacement for focus from the previous game, with finishers only available when you get roughly a 15 combo count. The venom attacks gradually get better in power, and this is paced very well. This is almost regardless of the skill points from the previous game that you can get on leveling up. Skill points can be spent on free skill trees like last time, including a new stealth tree. In fact, Miles can also use camouflage to temporarily be invisible around enemies, with so much as the smallest punch giving you away. The gadgets only amount to 4, which is a little disappointing for combated stealth situations, but given the venom and camouflage are more imperative, that can mostly be forgiven. Also note that a few skills and gadget upgrades are only available in New Game Plus. The progression with main missions and side missions is similar to before, but with some noticeable differences. The first main difference being the Spider-Man app, which you can swipe left on your PS5 controller to see what side missions and requests are available. From finding one's cat, sorry Charlie, to getting someone's truck out of the snow. The app, thanks to Genki's help, does also alert of nearby crimes, though it's easy not to notice at first that these are mostly randomized and never-ending, in contrast to the crimes checklist of the last game. So basically, the Collectibles and side quests are just a different name this time. You can do spider training with pre-recorded simulations made by Peter Parker, you can find time capsules which replace backpacks, you can find underground caches with tech parts. Don't make the same mistake I did and leave some of them behind in the bad guys' hideouts. Yeah, those make a return. You get XP from most missions to level up, plus you can use the tech parts and activity tokens to get more suits with their own modifications again, and gadgets with upgrades. So again, this can feel like a checklist of things to collect, and a few missions or arcs, including finding sound samples, can border on tedious, not to mention mundane or frustrating. But the side missions do feel a little more nuanced and emotional this time. They're far from perfect in contrast to other games that seem to have side missions that are just as powerful as the main missions, but it's an improvement, especially when they inform the backstory of Miles and his family and other characters. A few skills, upgrades, suits and side missions are only available after you get to the end credits or when you do New Game Plus. Speaking of New Game Plus, it has to be said this game is really short. A deliberate idea out for the first game, but it's almost too short. This does mean, regardless of one's thoughts about the financial value of short games, that maybe it's better to wait for a sale or to get it bundled with Marvel Spider-Man 2018 for a better valued experience. But should you even play it? Is it that similar to the previous game? Well, it can be said that the shorter length does trim the fat somewhat, where the checklist of things to do or collect is not necessarily as big, and there are, somewhat thankfully, no stealth sections like the Mary Jane and, of course, Miles Morales ones like in the last game. In this regard, aspects such as the storytelling, pacing, and some of the side content are an improvement over the previous game. If you did enjoy the previous game, you'll definitely like this, least of all being an excuse to spend more double-digit hours on doing the combat and traversal of Spider-Man around a fairly big 3D playground. If it's possible for the upcoming Spider-Man 2 to be a mix of the first game and Miles Morales in regards to being a huge open world, licensed superhero game combined with some of the tighter storytelling and gameplay mechanics of this game, then we may be in for a treat, and Spider-Man Miles Morales may as well have confirmed in preparation that 2 Spider-Men are better than 1.